Morning guys, on this absolute fresh winter's morning. It's about 6-7 degrees Celsius here, and we have just come back from a epic springbuck hunt in the Karoo. We hunted with Nick Davenport, and he posted a Facebook post which I spotted. Come and cull 50 springbuck, 2 days, bring 8 friends with type of thing. I forwarded this on to my brother because I know he's keen on hunting and finding lots of guys to put together for a group. And my brother made contact with Nick, and he organized a group of us to go and experience this hunt in the Karoo. Something very different to what we do here along the coast, and the properties are vast open spaces. So we were all excited and geared up to do this and have this experience in the Karoo. I myself haven't done a driven hunt like this in years. It was something we used to do every season, but with the way the industry has gone and the way the industry has changed, these type of hunts are few and far between. So we're extremely lucky to bag the last hunt of Nick's, because he does a limited number of these hunts a year. So it started off early Thursday morning. I left the farm here at around 3:30, and I headed off to Grahamstown, where I'd be picking up my buddy Alistair, who was traveling with me. Well guys, we're pulling into our first stop, little sleepy hollow of Grahamstown. So yeah, on our way to pick up Alistair, and it's a whopping 3 degrees outside. My brother was traveling with another guy, Etienne, from Port Elizabeth, and his brother-in-laws and nephew were traveling from East London. So we had 7 of us in total to make our group, and my route was probably 3.5 hours from where I live to where we were hunting, between Pierston and Graaff-Reinet. And I traveled up here, grabbed Alistair in the morning, and my route took me Grahamstown, Riebeek East, Komadacha, onto the N10 towards Joburg, onto the road to Somerset East and to Pierston. So that was my route through to the hunting property, and everything went well. We kind of all got there at the same time. Finally the passengers woken up. There's the co-driver. Ryan arrived a little earlier than us. My co-pilot slept in a little bit, so he was a bit late for pickup, and we made up some good time. And then Warren and David and Nicholas from East London, I waited for them in Pierston, then we drove together and we got to the farm. So we didn't waste any time. We dropped all our bags. The farmer was there waiting for us. I think we all arrived around 8 o'clock. Ryan might have been a bit earlier. Got ourselves kitted out. Not too sure how this all works, because it's a new experience for most of us. He took us down to his dam, which has got a nice backdrop for us to check our rifles, which is an excellent thing, guys. If any of you are traveling from coastal to high elevation, check your rifles. Your rifles will print differently on paper. They tend to shoot a little bit higher than what you zeroed them at sea level. It's got a lot to do with the denseness of the air, but we're not going to get into those hunting trajectories and how can I say, chats around the fire. beer conversations. So anyway, so we get sorted out there, and then the landowner has a quick briefing with us on explaining how everything's going to work. And safety, safety, safety. If you drop a guy stays in his spot until I come back and pick you up. No walking around. This is your hunting area. And he explained it extremely well and did an excellent job with his team keeping us safe throughout this whole hunt. So we weren't hunting Nick's property itself because Nick had already done, I think, maybe 4 or 5 hunts already prior to this on his. But Nick has got a great relationship with all his landowners, and Nick's breeding some quality springbuck on his properties, and he's helping his land neighbors to build up the same quality herds that he's got. So that's the idea. So we went on to the first property and got all set up. I had a beautiful setup where I was under like a wild plum tree. I had my sandbag wedged in the V of the tree and my rifle on top of that. I managed to set up my camera in the wedge of the tree to try and get some shots for you guys. And I was standing there all nice and quiet, and this is my hunting zone. To my left is Alistair. I've got a fence line here. So these are stock ranches, guys. They're not game fence ranches. So the springbuck moved through the stock fences on the properties. And I heard some stones making a noise behind me, and I turned and the springbucks were standing 8 yards behind me. And I just stood quietly. I was dressed in my trees and camo hoodie, and I blended in quite nicely with the tree that I was standing there. The springbucks trotted off and they got to the fence line. I got myself all set up. I thought, now they're going to come trotting down the fence line. But these guys were a little bit sharper than us. They knew where the holes were, and they snuck through the fence into the other section of the property. And that was that. So now, to my left, Alistair was sitting, and some others snuck through the bush line that I was on and headed across the vast open plains. And Alistair was parked underneath a little bush in the middle of this, and they ran directly past him. And they hesitated, and he managed to shoot the first springbuck. So he opened the account for the trip. With that, the landowner did his loop, and he came past me and he said, no, he's picking me up. There's not enough springbuck to push around here for us. He was hoping for a bit more than obviously in the other areas. He's going to take us to another spot. So he picked me up and then dropped me off with Alistair, and we waited because then he was going to pick up all the rest of the guys and then pick us up on the way out. So while we were standing there, I popped the drone up in the air to fly it out to show you guys how vast the areas we were hunting, as in flat open spaces, which led to when we had the conversation with the landowner, well, how far are we going to be shooting? So he says, well, anything from 20 yards to 200 plus yards. So he wasn't wrong. You're either going to shoot the thing out your barrel, or it's going to be extremely long shots but flat open area. So with that, the pickups came along. They picked us up, they loaded the springbuck up, and off we went to the house quickly. We dropped that springbuck off. We grabbed something to eat, because now it takes a lot of time setting up these hunting spots, and you hunt and then you move off and you go set up another area. So it was just before lunch. So everyone grabbed a bite to eat because we wanted to get out and go and get hunting at the next spot. So off we went to the next spot. Again, we drove in. Dave did an excellent job of dropping us off. Well, guys, we are on to our second beat of the day. We only got one springbuck in the first beat. We probably only saw about 20 there, and they moved through the property quite quickly. So we've moved on to another farm. So I'm just walking out to my spot and where the farmers put me, and they're going to pop out the rest of the guys, and then they're going to start driving the springbuck around again. So yeah, we just spotted a porcupine running here in the day, which is unusual because they're nocturnal animals. Watching some big springbuck rams out in the flats. So fingers crossed. I'm quite packed. I don't normally hunt with so much. I've got a backpack. It's a first for me. Sandbags, shooting sticks, and getting set up so we can make as many ethical, accurate shots as possible. So we'll catch up later. Cheers. And I was dropped off in this beautiful area where it was a small ridge line. So guys, it is flat. There's no big mountains where we're hunting. We're in the flat section. There are big mountains behind us, but we're in the plains part of it. But there's like a little ridge with a bush line, this open clearing, and then I got a face to shoot into, which has got trees and thorn trees and bush in. And way to my left, there's this big open plain where I could see hundreds of springbuck where I was sitting. So while they were busy dropping guys out in their spots, I'm sitting there quietly, and I could see the pickup way to my left, right down the bottom. So I'm guessing it's like the last guy that they're putting off, and 3 springbuck rams sneak out to my right. And they're going along, they're stopping. But what I found where I was sitting in my spot was in the clearing. They would have bolted across the clearing, and then they'd get to the like bush line and slow up and stand slow up. So while I was busy watching them for them to get into my zone, because I could shoot from there to there and there to there, 2 rams were fighting and scrumming. None of them knew I was there. It was super awesome to watch this happening. And they eventually stood with the 2 fighting, and the one at the back stood broadside for me. I managed to get myself set up on my pack. I wanted to try and get the shot, but I hadn't quite got my camera set up. And I haven't got a great setup. I just use the iPhone, guys, in a gimbal, and that's my setup. I had to make a plan to try and stand the gimbal, so I opened up the bottom of my sandbag, stuck it in there, but I hadn't got that set up, so I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So I got myself settled in, squeezed the shot off, and I shot high, and I'm like, yes, there goes my first opportunity. And the springbuck ran off, and they went through the trees, and they trotted along, and they did a big loop, and they disappeared down the bottom. With this, the guy started shooting, because obviously the springbuck had started moving now, and you could hear guys were shooting and getting lucky. So I had a bit of time to set up my camera, and I was getting the camera set up, and then the next opportunity came. The springbuck again ran out literally behind me, and they were 5 yards behind me, and I couldn't shoot, so I was huddled up in my bush. Then I lay down, and I was lying in amongst this karoo bush, had a little bit of a shooting window, and the springbuck came and ran, and they stopped in front of me. When I looked at the shot, I thought it was probably, 60, 70 yards. That's what it looked like, because it looked like the springbuck ran and stopped here in front of me. And I put the crosshairs in the middle of the chest. It was a big old female. Squeezed the trigger, and she folded there. So I got my first springbuck. Again, camera wasn't set up. These self-filmed hunts, guys, are not easy. But anyway, I was smiling. I got my first springbuck. And while these were happening, some more springbuck came running up from my left, and then there's a little bit of a draw where they kept sneaking, but they'd be going along slowly and stopping. It's in my shooting zone, but it is a poke. It's far. So I thought, no, well, I'm quite comfortable. I'm set up on my sandbag. I watched the springbuck spread out. There was a lone ram standing all by himself on the bush. There's like a little bush next to it. And I, again, obviously didn't have the camera set up properly. He stood there listening, looking away, and I put the cross right behind the back of his head, and I squeezed that trigger, and that springbuck folded right there. I was quite surprised and quite shocked with myself, because that was some excellent shooting, but I had the time, there was no rushing, and that shot was over 300 meters. So it was 320 plus yards away. It was a cracker of a shot on quite a small animal. So with that, I was 2 down. The guys in the orange bibs, they walk around the bush and move. they're not really beating or making noises, but they're just moving around. So the springbuck keeps circling. So their job is they see where your springbuck are, they come down, they grab your springbuck, they gut it out, and they drag it into the shade. So give you a rough idea of temperatures and stuff. We arrived there, it was a bit, some places were -5 on our way up, but when we were there, it was still -1, -2, 0 degrees. So what's that, 30, 32 Fahrenheit when we started hunting, and it didn't get warmer than about 8 degrees all day. So it was fresh, but the sun was warm. So they drag all your stuff out into the shade. So with that, guys were shooting at the top. It sounded like the oaks were having fun. They were getting at the bottom. Guys were shooting. We didn't have much communication with each other as the hunters. The landowner and his staff had radio comms. So this kept happening over and over and over again. And then eventually I had springbuck ram come out and stand to my left again. Nice chip shot, about 70 yards. This was really going to be cool. And I got the camera set up, but also rookie move. I was sitting there. I'd had so much fun. My bolt was open. I hadn't put another shell in and put a rifle on safety. So with me setting up the camera, filming the springbuck, it's like sneaking over, grabbing the rifle, closing the bolt. You'll hear the bolt go click, click, and the springbuck bolts off. But luckily I managed to turn the camera bag and turn myself and got set up. Then a second ram ran out, a smaller ram. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to leave that guy. He's going off. So I'm going to concentrate on this younger ram. And he ran and he stopped because I whistled at him. And he stopped. He gave me the opportunity. I thumped him. With that, the ram that I was actually going to shoot was ahead. And he turned and he looked back at his buddy. And amazingly, he was still in the frame of the camera. And I put a cracker of a shot on him, and down went the second springbuck ram. So I had 2 springbuck rams in a matter of minutes in that one little area. So that was cool. I've already got 4 down. I went across there with the guy. Again, I'm thinking these shots are close, guys. They are not. You see me walking out there in front of the camera, and the closest one was about 150 yards. The next one was like 200 yards. You're shooting quite far. So we got those dragged to the bush. So I got a pile of 4 springbuck underneath the tree there. The guy gutted them out quickly, and off he went again on his loop. So I sat there going, okay, cool, I'm 4 down. I'm only here to shoot 6 springbuck. I've already got 4 in the bag. Do I shoot another one? Do I wait for tomorrow? So I'm sitting there and I was like, I'll shoot something if, something comes around and gives me like an easy opportunity. But I kept seeing this one springbuck going around by himself, sneaky. And he was a old ram, but he only had 1 horn. So I don't know, if I get an opportunity I'm going to smoke him. And he came running across the flats, and I thought, oh, it's him. I'm set up, got the camera. I'm busy following him. Eventually left the camera, kept following him, hoping he would stop, but he didn't. And I took a shot at him on the fly, and I missed him. So that was my second shot that I missed for the day, and I was just messing up with my average. But while I was sitting there, he wasn't that clever. He looped around behind me, and he came sneaking out to my right. And with that, I spotted him, forgot all about the camera, picked up the rifle, and I had my first close shot for the whole hunt. It was about 45 to 50 yards, and I shot him right there. So that was my first day. What a awesome start to this hunt. I'd shot 5 springbuck, had a great day out, shooting with my 30-06 Ackley, shooting my first animals with the new loads, and super impressed. I'm definitely going to stick to that, guys. I'm shooting the 165 Sierra Game Changers, and my rifle is absolutely loving them. So that was a great first day. I think our final total for that day was 29 springbuck. Everyone shot a couple springbuck. Alistair opened the card and shot nothing in the afternoon. So it all depends on where you put out and what is stopping in front of you. You see hundreds of springbuck, guys. Don't get me wrong, but it's to make that clean, ethical shot where you have it standing and you can shoot it right there. And then I made one running shot. I should have never pulled the trigger, but luckily I didn't wound it and I got him on his second attempt past me. So that is what the whole hunt was all about. We ended up back at the farmhouse, got all set up. The guys gutted all the springbuck out and they took all the heads off. They all hung outside and it was bitterly cold. Went around and we had a good old feast that evening, which was awesome. So we started off our second day. We went to a different property and we got all set up again. So now I only had one springbuck on my cards. I could shoot more, but I was going to stick to my 6. And then the rest of the guys were shooting more and this specific farmer had horses, so it's really traditional. So we had guys on horseback, we had guys on foot, and he set us all out. Morning, guys. We're on our day 2 of our springbuck hunt. You can see it's freaking cold. Got my trees and hoodie on and I've got it all the way up. My wind chill is icy. So yeah, we all set out in our spots. Guys are already shooting, waiting for some springbuck to come around. I think I've got 2 more left on my tag, and then what will happen is if anyone has wounded anything or whatever, we'll help the guys get them. Today is a proper driven hunt. The horses are out, the guys are out, and guys, if you're watching this, we're not hunting springbuck just in one spot. So this is the 3rd farm that we're on to do the number of springbuck that we are after. So there are lots of springbuck here, but the guys manage them carefully, and we are here shooting out specific areas where they're putting in or reintroducing better genetics. So there is a purpose to this. It's not that we are just trigger happy. There's a purpose to the hunt. So stay tuned. Hopefully I'll get some more shots for you guys. Cheers. And I'll set up in a really nice little spot where I had a tree limb down, which I had my sandbag on for the rifle. I managed to get the gimbal wedged up in the tree that I could turn it, 300 degrees to film both sides of the tree. And then I had my rifle on the pack, so I could shoot on the pack here, I could swing around, and I could shoot off my sandbag here. So I had a really nice setup. But what was happening is, with the springbuck moving around, they kept stopping in one specific spot, which was wasn't far from me, but I couldn't see them, and it was out of my shooting zone. So the landowner came down and he was throwing stones at them, trying to move them, because he was parked on top of a hill. So he moved me to that spot. But this day was bitterly cold. The wind chill was something else. We got so windburned. There was snow on the mountains the day before. So the wind was icy. So Alistair, my buddy, was over the hill, and I could hear him shooting, because he's shooting with a 300 Win Mag without a can on the front. So you knew when he was pulling the trigger. And the other guys were shooting. I think this day Nicholas had a cracker. I think he shot like 7 more springbuck, and he had shot 6 the day before. So he was having an excellent hunt. My brother, I think, shot 5 or 6. Warren shot 4 or 5 on the second day. The guys were really just having a blast. So the hunt was working extremely well, and I was sitting there huddled up, and there was a black springbuck ram, so we were allowed to shoot the black springbuck in amongst these commons. And the guys had missed him a few times there, and he'd made his way to me. Old ram, got tiny little horns like this. And I was getting so set up, and I wanted to get him on camera for you guys, and I think I was concentrating more on trying to get the footage for this video than actually pulling the trigger, because I get set up and then he'd move, and then I get set up again, and then making sure he's in the frame and making sure that I could shoot him. But with that, the guy with the horse was moving up slowly behind, and he pushed a few that trotted. So these had settled. They trotted to meet these. When they trot, then these trot off. And he came and he ran up a slope in front of me. I had a crack at him and I missed him. With that, they circled. They came running back down the hill, ran straight past me. I couldn't shoot him. They were just running too fast. And Nicholas managed to shoot him way on the opposite end of the property. So I'd been there the better part of the day, watching Springbuck run past me. Guys, numbers, unbelievable numbers. 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. Different groups of Springbuck moving around the whole time. An absolute eye-opening experience, the number of Springbuck on these properties. So very well managed, very well controlled. And eventually some Springbuck came slipping from my right again. I managed to get myself set up, and the Springbuck ram came running along, and he stopped. Unfortunately, he stopped behind a bush, but I still had him in frame, and I made the pin perfect shot, high shoulder shot, dropped him right there. So I was on my number 6. So I think everyone had a great morning that morning. Farmers came round, we loaded everything up, we headed back to his house. We had packed ourselves some lunch, we grabbed something to eat. Some of us were carrying on hunting, some of us weren't. So 2 of the guys went with Nick, so the guys could carry on gutting and finish gutting and taking the heads off the Springbuck. And then it was myself, Warren, Alistair, Etienne, that there were 4 of us. Yeah. 4 of us that were going to and my brother, that were going to, 5 of us, that were going to hunt one more section, one more area on the property. So we got the same thing. The farmer sets you up in these spots, gives you your shooting zones. My brother spots a beautiful kudu that came out there, and it was just nice getting out, seeing all these different things on what they're managing, their property. You saw some really nice impala, and I had the Springbuck come past me, but nothing slowed down enough for me to shoot. I think Warren shot another one, and I think Alistair shot another 2. So we finished up this epic experience with the sun setting in the Karoo, beautiful mountain range in the background. And I think Alistair got a total of 5 in total. I got 6, and the other guys knocked it out of the park, shooting 10 plus. So all in all, I think we totaled out at about 53 Springbuck, helping the farmers with their cull program. And the guys thoroughly enjoyed it. And what we did at the end of this, we went back to Nick's farmhouse. We had a great evening. Always great to be around the fire and amongst the like-minded hunters, chatting about the day, laughing about the funny things that are happening. And it was just a real, I want to say, like you guys have, deer camp hunting experience, where you go with a group of great friends and end up having a great time. And the next morning when Nick came back, I grabbed him and I said, let's have an interview, and this is what you'll see next, on all about how he has bred these top quality Springbuck. So stay tuned for it. You will see it now. It's coming up next. And he explains the ins and outs of his breeding program and where he started with his Springbuck to where he is now.